Hi crafty friends, Shana from ShanoukiArt. In a recent video I made these index cards. They are super funky and full of holes. I of course left these holes on purpose. I really love the look. And for this project I used my sewing machine to sew all the way around the index card, which allowed for stitching to appear over those open areas. If you'd like to see how these index cards are made, you can click here. I had a lot of comments asking to show the same process using alternate methods besides the sewing machine to patch the pieces together. So in today's video, I'm going to do just that, but I'm not going to create index cards again. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to work in my art journal, but it'll be in the same style, just without the machine stitching. I first need to find a suitable page in my art journal. I don't want something that already has work on, as I'm going to tear one of the pages and I don't want to obviously tear the artwork. So I'm going to find a page that has a blank area on the one side, and I think I'm going to go with this one. And for today's video, I'm also going to be using some of my printed designs, which are from ArtStacks. This is the full deck kit and available in a printed format or digital if you prefer. I will put a link in the description box below. The kit includes printed tissue paper, some doodles and words, and then it has the full deck cards in a vintage look, some mushrooms, hearts and butterflies, and some designs on a book page. I'm going to start with the tissue paper as my background. I'm going to attach this to the pages using Mod Podge. You can use gel medium or craft glue or even a glue stick. I just like using Mod Podge. It's always on my desk. It's handy. I find it really easy to use. Once I've placed the tissue paper down on the wet Mod Podge, I'm going to apply a layer of Mod Podge over the top as well. This just waterproofs it and allows me to add any kind of wet medium later. I'm not quite sure yet what I'll be doing. This is just my starting point, so I will prepare this in case I use color later. You'll notice my scrappy art journal has very uneven pages. Some are bigger than others. Even in this spread, the right page is a lot smaller than the left. I personally don't mind. I like it really scrappy and rustic like this, but of course you can use any kind of journal that you have, even if it's an old book, a handmade one or a bought one. I'm also going to add some of the tissue paper that has the music paper print, and you'll also notice I'm doing it in all directions. Some of the text is upside down or sideways. Of course you can do it any way you like. I also like this big number 4, so I'm going to add that to my background too. I'm going to dry my Mod Podge and then I'm going to add my white gesso. People often ask me if my pages or my artwork curls when I use a lot of wet medium, and as you can see the right page is curling up. Yes, it does. I don't mind it at all. It will eventually go flat once the book is closed. If it does bother you a lot though, you can press the pages under some heavy books overnight to try and flatten that out. Using a flat paintbrush, I'm adding the gesso over most of the background. I'm concentrating a thicker gesso on some areas so there's more whiteness, and then a bit lighter over other areas so it's a little bit uneven. I'm not covering it totally because I do want this to shine through, but I want to push it into the back so it's not so bold. It is, after all, the background. And then we're going to tear the right page. And then we're going to repatch it up with other bits and pieces. I want to include one of these vintage style playing cards. I'm just going to cut this out. You can use anything you have in your scrap box, and this is a great way to use up scraps or even pieces of artwork that you're not quite happy with. A fun way to reuse things. I'm going to tear the card in half too, just at an angle, and then I'm also going to use a piece of this background design and I'm going to patch that up and make it fit across, sort of making the size of the original page. It's not going to be exact, of course. They're not going to be flat edges. It's meant to be like a really rough patchwork. Now, when we're putting our pieces together, we are going to leave gaps. That's the idea of this project, but we do need some areas to overlap. We do need to apply some glue to keep this page together, but do leave those gaps. I wasn't quite happy with that first piece I put in, so I'm cutting a new one. And of course, I'm just tearing the edges because I want that rough edge. You can also use distressed ink if you like on your edges. I'm not using any for my page today. Just a note with this kind of project, don't leave the gaps too big between your pieces. Smaller gaps are fine. If the gaps are too big, there's very little paper in between the pieces to hold it together, and it can become really, really flimsy. Rather have more smaller gaps than one or two really big gaps. Not sure if you noticed, but I here accidentally forgot to add the altered playing card that I wanted to add, and I stuck this one down. Thankfully, I noticed as soon as I put it down and removed it, and then added the original piece I wanted. I've used some glue stick on the overlapping pieces just to keep these pieces together. Even in the index cards I made, the stitching around isn't really keeping everything together. That's more for aesthetic purposes. The glue actually keeps the bits together. Same for this one. I'm not going to add any more. I think I'm going to leave it with that. I'm just going to add a piece of white paper underneath to be able to show you and lift it up to the camera just to show you what it looks like from close up. Now, instead of the sewing that we did in the index cards, I'm going to do two different methods here. First, I'm going to use a piece of masking tape. I really love using masking tape in my mixed media projects. I love the color, I love the texture, and it's really easy to use. The one I have is a little wide for what I want, so I've just cut it slightly thinner, and then I'm just placing it underneath the page and then folding it over in half over the gap area on the bottom part of my page. The second thing I'm going to use to join these papers together is a stapler. We're going to place the staple on each side of the gap. You can do as many or as few as you want. I'm going to add another piece of masking tape at the top. This is to balance out the masking tape I've used at the bottom and also to hold the papers together. The page edge is uneven, so it's a little tricky. So I've torn the masking tape in half and placed two separate pieces facing each other, and then I'm just going to tear it down to size. It's going to be quite rough and uneven, but that suits the page. I have a small little gap area at the top that I'm not quite happy with. I'm just going to add a small piece of the tissue paper just to cover that up. A few more staples and a bit more masking tape. I'm placing the masking tape where the papers overlap. This will serve as a binder to hold it together, and it's also for aesthetic purposes. For the top one, I'm placing a piece at the back as well. Because of the gap, the masking tape is sticking on the back page, and also the staples are a little bit rough, so I've covered those with masking tape too on the back page. I'm now going to cut out another altered playing card, and I'm going to use this as part of my focal point on the left hand side of my spread. It's going to go somewhere sort of in the center, and then I'm going to use one of my butterflies as well as part of the focal point. I'm going to build this up with a few different layers underneath to make everything cohesive and balanced. I work through different elements to see what works best. I'm using a piece of that green background paper on the bottom left hand corner. That's to pick up the colors from the right hand side that I've used. And I'm also using a piece of cheesecloth. I always love using this to add texture, and it creates great background behind focal points. Besides the butterfly, I want to add something else for balance. I'm going to cut out this little doodle leaf from my kit and see if that will work. I feel we need a little bit more color underneath all of this to make everything pop. I'm going to use the same green that I used in the kit. And using my blending brush, I'm going to go through a leaf stencil. Not all over the page, just the top right and then the bottom left. And then once I place my elements back on top, you'll see how much better they actually pop off the page. It just enhances the background for them. I'm happy with that placement so far, so I'm going to stick this down. I'm adding a small piece of dress pattern tissue paper. I love the brown color, and I think it just adds to the enhancement of this corner embellishment. You don't need to add any additional glue to glue down the cheesecloth. Any glue you put on the element that's going on top of it will be enough glue to keep it in place. You'll notice that the altered playing cards from our ArtStacks kit also have a print on the back. How fun, they're double-sided. But I'm not using the back in this project, just the front will be visible. I feel my butterfly is getting a little lost because she's quite dark, so I want to lighten her up a little bit. With a plain piece of white paper, I'm going to draw around in pencil around the wings, but slightly bigger than the wings. So I'm going to do like a white base that's going to go underneath my butterfly. It's going to be bigger than the butterfly, so it sticks out from underneath and allows it to shine and pop. And it makes it more visible. I did the lines in pencil first just to see where I was going to make them, and then I used a black fine liner pen to go over it a couple of times so it looks like a doodle. And then to attach the two pieces together, I'm going to use the stapler. This will just add to the cohesion because I've got staples on the right hand side. And I think that looks 1,000 times better. Just a little big, so I'm trimming it down. I'm going to add another couple of pieces of masking tape. This is just for aesthetic purposes. I'm adding it as if it's helping to stick the altered playing card on the left. So I'm not quite sure what was wrong with my brain during this project, but I totally forgot that I had cut out that doodle leaf that you can see in the bottom left of my screen that was meant to go in this bottom left-hand corner. Feeling that something was missing in this corner, and although the leaf was right in front of me, I didn't notice it. I added some black crumpled up thread, thinking that's what it needed. And then thankfully, I noticed the doodle leaves, adding them with Mod Podge just tucked in underneath the altered playing card. Going to add a sentiment, going to cut one out from my kit. I was going to first go with the black on white, but I wanted something a bit bolder to balance out the dark butterfly. So I went with the white text on the black background. And I'm going to stick that flat on the right hand side. At closer inspection, I did not like that black thread. Thankfully, the glue was still wet, so I pulled that out. A small additional piece of cheesecloth. Difficult to see in the video, but it does add something. Some additional definition. I'm going to use my black watercolor pencil. I'm going to dip the point in some water. I'm just going to go around the edge of the altered playing card, just there where it is visible, not covered by masking tape or cheesecloth, and just go around and edge it. This will help it stand out more. A few small splashes of white acrylic paint. This will help connect all the elements. I really hope you enjoyed this art journal page and were inspired to create your own. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. Let me know what other ideas you have of joining the pieces together besides stitching, staples and masking tape. Thanks again for watching, happy creating, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!